Good morning. I invite the Honorable Deputy Governor to grace us with prayers today.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of thy name, and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex-official members, and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always. Amen.
Please be seated.
Administrations of rules and affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of messages and announcements.
We have received apologies for the Honourable Deputy Premier and the apologies for late arrival for the Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and reports.
None.
Questions to the Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
Recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move question number 20, standing in my name, which reads as follows. Can the Honourable Minister explain why the former government admin building is being torn down and why it cannot be redeveloped for various uses by the government, which is still paying rent for various departments? B, whether it could be developed and used for the new police headquarters, and C, what is the total area? Madam Speaker, that should have been what is the total land area? And I've said that to the Minister.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for planning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The answer to the question from the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is the Glass House is a very inefficient building by modern day standards. And that is no fault of any design done at the time or anything. It's just that we're talking 4 to 5 years later, almost. And it would cost more to refurbish it to an acceptable standard than it would be to demolish it and provide equivalent space in a new purpose-built facility. 2 studies have previously been carried out on the renovation of the Glass House. In March of 2006, the Government Office Accommodation Project Team and Independent Quantity Surveying Consultant, JEC, produced a joint report on the Glass House, specifically looking at the pros and cons of refurbishment versus demolition and replacing with new office space. In October of 2009, the GOAP team and Independent Quantity Surveying Consultant, BCQS, produced a joint report on renovating the Glass House to become the financial center of the Cayman Islands. And the results highlighted the following issues. The Glass House has a very inefficient layout, resulting in 28% of the floor area being used for service areas and circulation. The norm for modern office space would be 15%. The glasshouse also has a number of code violations, some of which would be difficult and expensive to fix. The worst of these is building egress with the elevators and both egress stairs being in the central core of the building. 2 enclosed external staircases would be required to correct this. Access would have to be provided through existing office area on each floor to each external stair. This would increase the floor area for service areas and circulation to an even higher level than the current 28%. And Madam Speaker, although it is not written in the answer, the estimates are, and are only estimates, that could increase the non-usable space of the building to some 35%. The glasshouse has inadequate thermal resistance and inefficient mechanical and electrical systems, resulting in very high running costs. And again, Madam Speaker, just for members' information, the new government administration building, square footage-wise, is approximately 6 times the size of the old glasshouse. The last recorded running costs for electricity of the old glasshouse was some $55,000 a month. And the new building, which is 6 times the size, runs an average of $85,000 a month. A structural survey by independent firm Cayman Engineering Limited concluded that there would likely be a need for strengthening of some structural elements if the building were to be renovated. Due to the base condition of the building, even with major renovation, it would not be able to match the energy efficiency and seismic and hurricane resistance of newer structures, for example, the new government administration building. And Madam Speaker, again, just for members' information, when the 2006 report was done, that was what caused the size to be increased of the new government administration building to increase by close to the size of what the old glasshouse was when it comes to the square footage of usable office space, in an attempt at that time to accommodate the extra space that would be needed. In the 2006 report, independent quantity surveyor JEC estimated that the cost to renovate the glasshouse would be $9.6 million. They also estimated that it would be $2.69 million cheaper than the $9.6 million to provide the equivalent usage space in the new government building, which is the new government administration building, than to renovate the glasshouse. Should be noted that JEC confirmed that whilst construction costs, this is recently now, Madam Speaker, that whilst construction costs have increased since the 2006 report, at present it would still be cheaper by a similar order of magnitude by way of costs to provide space in a new office building rather than to renovate the existing glasshouse. In the 2009 report, no cost comparison of renovation versus new building was done. However, the report provides 2 estimates for renovations, which were both higher than the earlier JEC estimate. These were $12.91 million for renovating the building with similar appearance to the new government administration building, that is, with what is called punched windows, and $15.69 million for renovating the building with a similar appearance to the existing glass house. And just for everybody's information, these estimates included $600,000 for rental and rehousing financial entities from the glass house during construction and relocation costs, which were not included in JEC estimates. Whether it would be redeveloped and used for a new police headquarters, Madam Speaker, in light of these findings, 2006-2009, and the preliminary reports received from JEC, although I have commissioned for them to give a full report, it is not considered practical or value for money to renovate the glass house for any other use. Madam Speaker, again, in the Honourable Leader of the Opposition's question, he spoke about what is the area, and while that is not in the answer, what we have done, Madam Speaker, is where the road, and I think people will understand this, where the road used to go through alongside the police station going towards Radio Cayman and the glass house, we have or are in the process of subdividing that off so that that becomes part of the property where the police station and the old licensing department lies. And of course, the Radio Cayman area and the parking lot would not be changed in any way. So the actual area where the glass house is, outside of what would be for the police station and what would be for Radio Cayman and the parking lot, is approximately 1 acre of land.
If there are no supplementaries, I recognize a member from Northside.
Through you, Madam Speaker, to the Minister, has the government placed any value on the historical significance of the building, both to the Cayman Islands and the Caribbean? Because I believe it was the first all-glass and aluminum building erected in the Caribbean when it was done.
Before you respond, Honourable Minister, I recognize Honourable Premier for the suspension of 23, 7, and 8 to allow question times to continue beyond 11.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 in order that the business of the House may continue, or the question time may continue beyond 11 o'clock.
The question is that Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 be suspended to allow question time to continue beyond the hour of 11 a.m. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Standing Order 23, 7, and 8 is hereby suspended. Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, any attempt to prescribe a historic value to the glass house would be subjective, meaning simply it would depend on what an individual or an entity's own thoughts are. Now, I certainly am not making less of that than what it is, and I can only say, if members feel very strongly about it, I am sure that the Premier and the government would entertain thoughts that might wish to be expressed. What I have answered are facts simply based on costs and commercial value of the usage. So while I hear what the member is asking, I really don't know how we could arrive at what would be called an objective valuation of historic value. But regardless of the historic value, it's simply a policy decision as to whether that historic value serves more of a purpose than anything else.
Recognize the member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I know if the Minister will recall, I was, if not the first, one of the first to suggest we sell the police station a long time ago. But I'm wondering if since he said that the government, it would be a policy, if the government decide on the historical value of the building. I'm wondering if the government ever considered selling both locations and making it that much more attractive to a potential investor. That is the glass house and the police station.
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, we have given that consideration, but when we subdivide the portion that I'm speaking of from the old, because I think it's 3 parcels total, but 2 parcels of land encompass where the police station is now, including the old licensing department. And when we take off where that road goes through and do the subdivision combination of that parcel, it is not 2 acres, but it is perhaps, I think it's at least 1 acre and 3/4 without the portion left for the glass house. And that, Madam Speaker, in our search, is the largest parcel that could be redeveloped that is in the OPY area standalone, unless people were to acquire several adjoining parcels. So we thought that 1 acre and 3/4 is quite large enough for anybody to consider to redevelop the whole area. And just to add to what the member from East End has said, I do remember your suggestion, member from East End, and what you will know by now, I think, is that the plan is to build a new police station. Right, exactly. I think I'm finished, Madam Speaker.
Recognize Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the members or the minister's answer, I don't agree with nothing they have said. Madam Speaker, I put it on record one more time. Madam Speaker, there are valuations done for historical purposes if you value something all over the world. And I will ask the question, but I want to preface it by saying that our country be losing everything. There's hardly any of the old buildings left, in particularly so in Georgetown. Madam Speaker, I feel, and I put on record that we should renovate it, use it for whatever space we can use it for, and for things. It was going to be the Cayman Islands Financial Center. It has a good vault, all those things. Really, I think the public well knows, well understands. They know my position. I believe that we should preserve it for whatever space we have. Madam Speaker, take our time, fix it up, clean it up, whatever we have to do to preserve it. There's that period of time when it was important, Madam Speaker, for the country to have got that and to knock it down, and it goes from us forever. Dr. Roy, house gone, nothing much left in Georgetown. The first old glass house or admin building burnt down, we knew that. Anyway, Madam Speaker, what I would want to find 2 things. If the minister can tell us, if he can't, then I would like it in writing, how many entities of government are renting outside. I would think there's quite a few still. And that building, even if they had to build a building out as was planned first, 4, 5 stories high, 5 stories, 6, 7 stories high, right behind it, adjoining to it, it can work. There were plans for that, but I don't know. I would like to find out how many, Madam Speaker, departments, entities are not in the present admin building. And the question, Madam Speaker, is if the member could give us copies of the various reports that he has on those buildings, on that building. The 2 he talked about, and another one that he has, Madam Speaker. One was done during when we first entered office in 2009, and I know I don't have that in any my papers.
Honorable Minister responsible for planning.
Madam Speaker, I have absolutely no problem. I am confident that both reports that were done can be located and copies can be made available to members. The other supplementary that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asked regarding how many entities outside, I don't know the answer to that offhand. What I do know, and I can advise the member, is that we now have the government administration building at some 86% occupancy. So the space that's left there now, which we continue to work along with the various leases, can only accommodate some small units, not the larger departments or anything like that. So that the new building is pretty well working to the optimum efficiency with regards to the running costs and the lease savings on that. And just to advise that, because I remember hearing the member from East End speaking to a multi-story car park. The reason why we didn't build a multi-story car park adjacent to the government administration building at the time when that was the original plan, Madam Speaker, just so members will understand and remember, we, instead of the $6 million, which that was estimated to cost, we decided to purchase the, I think it's 4.34 acre plot, which is directly behind immigration, which is now used as a car park for staff for the government office, the government administration building. And the idea was and still is, because that adjoins the immigration department, which is on the main road, Elgin Avenue, is if and when new office accommodations are required by the government, that can easily be used to build whatever size building that is required. And at that point in time, you would then consider a multi-story car park to accommodate parking for both. That's just so that members will know that. And that's not today, and that certainly will be for some future government to be considering. But I will provide the answers that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition have asked for in writing.
Member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, now that the Minister says, he says that he doesn't know how much we're renting outside, but I wonder if he can tell us whether or not the government is going to rent where CNB branch was, because I see Public Works seems to be there. Where's CIBC building? The downstairs of that, because I see Public Works there now. It looks like they're doing some kind of work there.
Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I would have to investigate that because I don't know the answer to that. I don't know anything that's happening there, but I will find out for the member. I understand, but I don't know the answer to that.
Madam Clerk, next item of business.
Statements by the honorable members and ministers of the cabinet.
Recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this morning I wish to table in this Honorable House a draft of the National Solid Waste Management Strategy, which will go out for public consultation on Monday, 26th of October. The draft strategy contains future waste management options that will be considered to develop an integrated solid waste management system for the Cayman Islands. The purpose of the strategy is to provide key policies and objectives for the future management of solid waste and the delivery of an integrated solid waste management system within the Cayman Islands. It also identifies important steps and actions that will be taken to deliver the system, and in so doing, address the current unsatisfactory landfill situation. These actions will be targeted to improve the sustainability of all waste management practices, make increased use of waste as a resource, and ensure the protection of the environment and amenity of the islands. This draft strategy has been based on the agreed National Solid Waste Management Policy, which set forth our vision, values, strategic direction, and objectives to suitably manage solid waste in the Cayman Islands for now and generations to come. The final policy was published in August this year, following a period of public consultation. In developing the draft strategy, options for change and improvement in the way that waste is managed on the islands have been appraised. These options cover a variety of areas ranging from recycling depots to the treatment of residual waste that remains after recycling. These collectively contribute to the enhanced sustainability of waste management practices, waste reduction, increased reuse and recycling, the recovery of energy from residual waste, substantially reduced dependence on increasingly expensive and unsustainable landfills, protection of the environment, self-sufficiency as far as this is pragmatically deliverable, and the principle that the polluter pays. The options analysis has also helped in the development of a reference project, which includes waste management options that have been assessed as having the most potential for fulfilling the policy direction and which are likely to be successful within the Cayman context, including an affordable and achievable solution that is right for the country. In summary, the reference project comprises waste reduction measures, including public education and waste reduction, reuse and refurbishment of bulky waste, community recycling depots and recycling facilities, transfer and bulking facilities on each island, composting of yard and garden waste, the potential introduction of curbside recyclable collections, and the treatment of residual waste in a waste recovery plant. Madam Speaker, as I mentioned, this strategy will go for public consultation on Monday until the end of November. Open house sessions are planned by the Minister of Health for the week of 16th of November to meet with members of the public and get their feedback and comments, after which the strategy will be finalized. The next phase after that calls for the development of the outlined business case, which guides final decisions for the creation and successful implementation of the integrated solid waste management system for the country. Madam Speaker, with the tabling of this draft strategy, we continue to make progress towards a real solution to the country's waste management challenges. We are following the required process, but yes, Madam Speaker, we are making progress. As I've said before, the process may appear slow, but it is sure. This, Madam Speaker, the tabling of the draft strategy is an important milestone. And so, Madam Speaker, while it has taken us a while to get to the point we are today, we are finally here. I am equally confident that the progress will continue steady and sure, and that we will provide the country with a waste management system that is second to none, which will serve our needs far into the future. Madam Speaker, as I keep saying, reaching this benchmark and the tabling of this draft strategy is even further evidence that this is a progressive government that gets things done. With these few words, Madam Speaker, I commend this draft National Solid Waste Management Strategy to the House and look forward to receiving comments and suggestions from honorable members or people and residents during the consultation period. Sarge. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this honorable House the National Solid Waste Management Strategy for the Cayman Islands consultation draft.
So ordered. I recognize Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, under Standing Order 30, Subordinate 2, should like to ask the Premier a question on this.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, can the Premier say if they have decided have there been a decision as to where a landfill will take place, if any?
Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, we have said from the beginning, indeed before we took office, that we believe that the siting of the landfill should remain where it is now.
If the Honorable Leader of Opposition.
So, Madam Speaker, what the government envisages, and he'll be discussing this with the public, is that these various matters, waste reduction, reuse, all these different things will happen, but the dump will the landfill will stay where it is. That will be worked on, remediated, whatever that needs to be done there. That's what the Premier is saying.
Honorable Premier.
Madam Speaker, we have not closed the possibility that aspects of the overall waste management strategy would not be sited on remote property. What we are determined to do is to keep the landfill facility where it is now. The battles involved in resiting it somewhere else, I think the Leader of the Opposition is well aware of what's called the Nimbus syndrome, the battles are just going to be so long and so hard that we doubt that we would get through with, assuming that's where we want what we wanted to, we would get through in a decade with what needs to be done urgently in terms of the landfill. So the plan, although we're still at the draft consultation stage, the thought, I should say objective on our part, is to remediate the landfill as far as that is possible, reduce the amount of waste that is put in landfills, extend the life of the current location for as long as we can, explore the possibility of perhaps acquiring more property in the immediate area, and as far as possible, keep the various waste management measures on that property as far as that is possible. But perhaps composting, recycling, some of the other less, shall I say, less objectionable as far as the public is concerned, activities might be located on remote properties. But we are not there yet in terms of final decisions about that.
Madam Clerk.
Personal explanations.
None.
Obituaries and other ceremonial speeches.
None.
Raising of matters of privileges.
None.
Other business. Private amendment motions. Private amendment motion number 8, 2015-2016, National Roads Authority Agreement with DART Realty Cayman Limited to be moved by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, First Elected Member for West Bay.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move private members' motion number 8, standing in my name, which reads as follows. Whereas the Second Amendment to the NRA agreement with Dart Realty Cayman Limited was executed on the 25th of July 2012, and whereas it contains Clause 21, which refers to educational and community purposes land in West Bay, and whereas it requires government and Dart Realty Cayman Limited to agree to the location of the 20 acres in West Bay in order for the Dart Cayman Limited to transfer it to government for nil consideration, and whereas the District of West Bay is in dire need of cemetery space to bury their loved ones, be therefore resolved that government consider moving expeditiously to negotiate with Dart Realty Cayman Limited for government to take ownership of the property, and be therefore further resolved that once government has taken ownership of the property, that some of it be used for the development of a new cemetery for the District of West Bay, as was the intention when the agreement was signed.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
The motion has been duly moved and is now open for debate. Does the Honourable Leader of the Opposition wish to speak thereto?
Madam Speaker, the matter of cemetery space has been one that is well known to most of us in this House, particularly those of us who have been in cabinet and those of us that live in the community. The cemetery space is nearly nil. Madam Speaker, we have been talking about this for some time and trying to get space to decide on. We've had public meetings on it, and space was a suitable area of the community, knowing the nuances that exist and those that have been pointed out to us about over generations, what has taken place and why. We have tried to find space, and certainly in the, as the motion says, when the NRA agreement with Dart Cayman Realty Limited was being discussed, it is something that we put forward to them. Look, we need some property. You have plenty of property, albeit it's swampy, but can be used as we know. We would like to have some land to be able to be used for community purposes. And we came up with that. 20 acres, we agreed on that. I don't think that is finalized. It was finalized then, but of course the government is working, I think, making further considerations from their points of view on the matter. Madam Speaker, some time ago, I did bring a motion, and the member from East End was minister that took it on board. And he made it possible that we can build a vault on your own property. And that can happen now, but it seems all other options are not available. Mausoleums, whether huge ones standing above ground, whether we bury stand up. Stacking is called. I was going to explain that, but whether you have like two vaults and two persons in one vault, one on top of the other. I've seen that in the States, of course. And none of those have been available as yet. Even to cremation, we still have to take the body overseas for that to happen. So we have none of those facilities. The space in the West Bay means cemetery. And Madam Speaker, all my life we've been talking about these, and some people still ask me, well, where that is. So I like to give names to things, and I can soon come up with some names to give so that people know, probably, hopefully, 10, 15, 30 years from now, long after we're gone, that's the cemetery we're talking about. But the main cemetery is the one we enter when we enter the main district of West Bay, because the West Bay district starts from the village of the Galleon, of course. But the cemetery opposite the fire station in West Bay, that's the main cemetery. And then we have the Northwest Point Cemetery and the Bosun Bay Cemetery. But particularly the main cemetery and the Northwest Point Cemetery, space is nil. There is land in Bosun Bay available for the government to purchase if the need arises in Bosun Bay. Because Bosun Bay still have quite a bit of space, I believe, for burial purposes at that cemetery. But, Madam Speaker, West Bay is a growing community, and we have never kicked against other persons from outside the district being buried there. Madam Speaker, that has taken up quite a bit of space, because people from outside of West Bay made a preference to be buried in West Bay, even though they didn't live there. And so that has to be looked at as well. We are a growing community, and the need is there. As representatives, we believe there has to be a new area developed that is planned for the future. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that we can utilize that area, an area not far from where the road, the new road comes out on Barabanu Road, and not anywhere between that and, which would be sort of, I guess, northeast of the Church of Christ, there on Barabanu Road. It would have to be developed, as I said, but my thought process was that once the government made their determination on this on this deal with the Darts, that they could get the Dart family or companies to develop it. Now, you would have to sit down and discuss with them. A lake could be built, developed there, which the fill from that would be used to fill the whatever amount the government decided with us would be utilized of that 20 acres property. I said these things, Madam Speaker, knowing full well that, you know, negotiations are that, and not all the time as easy as you say it, you can get it done. When I say that, negotiating, because there's always I want and you want, and I got to give and you got to give. But I do believe, Madam Speaker, it's possible. And whatever anyone feels about how they do things, how things are done, when the Darts do something, it seems to be well accepted afterwards in the community, their various projects. I believe that that could be negotiated with them, and that we would get a very decent burial ground, new cemetery for our community. I hope the government can take this on board, as I said, Madam Speaker, seeing what it is.
Does any other member wish to speak? Recognize the Honorable Minister responsible for infrastructure.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I have had words with the Honorable Leader of the Opposition regarding this motion. Words not meaning arguments, but we have talked about this. So before I go into my explanation of what the government is doing and what the government intends to do, I just want to clarify before going any further that the way the motion is worded makes it difficult for the government to accept the motion as it is worded. But as I explained to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, it is not that the government is not in sync with what he hopes to achieve for his district. So let me explain a few things. As he said in his presentation, Madam Speaker, the affair has had some changes with regards to the NRA agreement, second, third, or fourth, whatever the amendments are, or will end up being. And the Premier is leading those negotiations. They have not been finalized yet, and there is room for discussion about what the Leader of the Opposition has said. But let me just go into some of the specific details with regards cemetery space and that kind of, and those kinds of matters. And just to explain, Madam Speaker, the resolved sections of the motion speaks to government moving expeditiously to negotiate with DART for government to take ownership of the property. And that relates to the 20 acres. And be it therefore resolved that once government has taken ownership, that some of it be used for the development of a new cemetery. So the difficulty is that if this were to become a reality, and if it is practical, I'm saying it may not be 20 acres. That's all I'm saying. But let us not have to argue about the actual wording of the motion. Let us speak to the spirit that is intended. There is a 2014, Madam Speaker, report on cemetery space throughout the islands and what is available, what projected needs are over the next 25 years. Some of those reports may even give estimates for further downline. And speaking specifically to the West Bay District, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition is correct. The West Bay Cemetery, as we know it, which is the one going in to West Bay by the 25-mile-an-hour zone sign and the fire station, is completely filled. Completely filled. I think it has 5 spaces left, but those 5 spaces are already purchased, although nobody's actually buried there, but people have purchased those spaces already. So for all purposes and intentions, that space is filled. There was a move or a thought for some property which is on the opposite side of the road going in by the fire station. But when it was looked at that specific location, not only was that property inadequate space-wise for any medium-term planning, but also it is a highly residential area, and there was some thought that because the space was so limited and the numbers that you would get from it, and to allow for any parking or anything like that, because already there are difficulties with parking space for whenever the main West Bay Cemetery is used, although it won't be long before there won't be any need for that because it'll be totally filled. And I know, Madam Chair, that previous governments were out on the search for suitable land space for cemetery space in West Bay. Norwest Point, the member is also correct. That's just about filled. There is space at the Bosun Bay Cemetery, but there's also a parcel of land adjoining the Bosun Bay Cemetery, which the government is looking at. We have talked to the family that owns that parcel, and for future needs, it may well be in the country's best interest if government could acquire that, especially if we can get that property to pay for it over a period of time, knowing that the need in that specific area is not dire right now. But if somebody else buys it then and develops it, then that's it. You won't have that space. So we're looking at that. And Madam Speaker, I want to be a little bit careful, but I do understand. I know how it is with what I may call sub-districts within districts. And I know that there are some people, or perhaps several people, who, when they come from a specific area, do not want to be buried in another area, even if it's within the same boundaries of the district itself. And that is not peculiar just to West Bay. In fact, Madam Speaker, I know you know just as good, because it's certainly not peculiar just to Cayman Brac, but Cayman Brac is included. A spot Bay, I don't want to go down the point to be buried. I'm just saying. So understanding all of those nuances and coming back now to the point that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is making with his motion. Because we are not, or were not, and still are not, right? Because we are not 100% sure of how that property is and how easily it could be reclaimed and the uses of it and what it would cost to do so. What we have done, Madam Speaker, is we have commissioned some test bores in the general area where DART had offered the land to see exactly what kind of estimates we could develop, which are reasonable estimates we could develop as to taking a certain area of that land and actually developing it for cemetery space. Madam Speaker, if that proves to be practical, then I am confident the government will be happy to move in that direction. What I can say to yourself, your good self, Madam Speaker, and other members, especially the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, is that the way the negotiations are poised now, with the Premier wishing to conclude very shortly, although we all wished to conclude shortly a long time ago, but the way they're poised now, just so that the Leader of the Opposition will know, there is nothing that would prevent us being able to acquire a portion of that land. So we have not lost that option. All I want to say to the Leader of the Opposition with regard to his motion is to allow us the time to make the comparisons by way of doing these test bores and being able to gather the correct information to make sure that it's a practical exercise. I certainly am happy because the Minister in Cabinet, who is from West Bay, Minister Rivers, is also very keen on bringing resolution to the matter, and she too has been discussing the matter with us to see what the best answer is. So I am happy, once we know what we know, to sit with the member and his other colleagues from the district and go through it and come to an amicable solution to ensure that we get the best end result, but we have to make sure that from a fiscal standpoint that it's doable and practical. I hope that satisfies the Leader of the Opposition with his motion, Madam Speaker, and I hope that my explanations have made the points which I want to make, and I hope that he understands that we want to bring about the best results for his district also. In fact, the entire country, Madam Speaker, because just as a matter of interest, in East End, for instance, there was a parcel adjoining the East End Cemetery, which we are now in the process of acquiring, again, for future use, so that we don't run into difficulties, even though in some parts of East End, we have had difficulty relocating any other parcels for future use. But we keep hacking away at it as we go along, and so too we will with the spirit of the motion that the Leader of the Opposition has brought. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honorable Leader of the Opposition to exercise his right of reply.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Minister for his various thought process on where we go from here. I guess he didn't specifically say it, but I guess he is not accepting the motion. Change it. What is it in the motion? But Madam Speaker, listen. I am past that at this point on the weekend. If there is something in here that they couldn't agree with, it was 20 or whatever, then. But if it is out of an abundance of caution, if it is not 20 acres, then a specific number as the government will negotiate. And I hereby ask that we change it to that, Madam Speaker. That's them simple words. As the government will negotiate. We asked for 20, that's what's in the agreement, or we agreed with them on the 20, but as the Minister says, they might very well not be 20. It could be 10, or it might be maybe more, right? So if the government will agree, and we are nearly on all fours with all that the Minister has said, I think both of us are right there, but I don't think that I can accept, once the government accepts that we can do this, that I can't change this motion to read. Otherwise, if you look at the last whereas, mind you, that is not the resolve. The resolve is only that government consider moving expeditiously to negotiate with that to take ownership of the property. But the motion, the whereas court leading to the resolution says 20. But that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on the two resolve. But you speak to 20. But if you went and moved it up to 30, then I don't see the problem with that, Madam Speaker, because he would not be outside of what the motion is saying. However, Madam Speaker, I don't want to fight with Kurt Tibbetts today. I want to get the motion passed. So let me amend that by saying that, Madam Speaker, an area as would be negotiated with government.
Member, can you perhaps just take 2 minutes to formulate the oral motion as to where you want to do it, so that for the record, if you need just 2 minutes to put your mind together with the Minister by saying. The House will be suspended for 5 minutes.
Ms. Dean on the 20.